"Mom, are you really going to take care of Dad?" My daughter secretly asked me. She knew that I had always harbored a deep-seated hatred for my ex-husband, who had an affair during my pregnancy. When I learned that he had been paralyzed in a car accident, I even opened an expensive bottle of red wine to celebrate. Of course not. Upon hearing my answer, a look of disappointment clearly crossed my daughter's face. She pursed her lips but said nothing. "Not just me, but us. Although he has never taken care of you for a single day, he is still your biological father after all. Now that he is paralyzed, can you really bear to leave him alone?" After a few seconds of hesitation, my daughter gave a heart-warming answer. Hearing this, I coldly snorted in my heart. "This time, I really want to see if you can truly be so filial. In my previous life, my ex-husband, Yang Lin, had an affair during my pregnancy. In a fit of anger, I divorced him when I was 7 months pregnant. After the divorce, Yang Lin continued to pester me for several months. However, upon learning that I had given birth to a daughter, he never appeared in my life again. At that time, I had to play the roles of both father and mother. To support my daughter, I took on 3 jobs at most, sleeping only 3 hours a day. I was so exhausted that my whole body ached. Finally, when my daughter graduated from university and found a satisfying job that could support herself, just when I thought life had finally turned around, Yang Lin showed up at this time. In the years after he left me, he had a prosperous life. He not only had a son with the mistress, Lu Ruyan, but also accumulated a considerable fortune until he became paralyzed. After Lu Ruyan absconded with the property, he became helpless, penniless, and had no one to take care of him. Only then did he remember that he still had a wronged ex-wife and daughter. In my previous life, when Yang Lin came to the door, I drove him out with a broom. Surprisingly, my daughter even blamed me for this, saying that I was too cruel and heartless towards her biological father. I didn't explain. Later, Yang Lin threatened me that if I didn't agree to let him live in my house, he would go to my daughter's workplace and make a scene, making it known to everyone that my daughter had abandoned her biological father. At that moment, I panicked. I was extremely afraid that my daughter's newly obtained establishment job, which she had worked so hard to get, would be ruined by him. Therefore, I had to compromise and bring him, who was paralyzed, back home and take care of him wholeheartedly. My daughter was very happy. Every day when she came home, she would affectionately call him Dad. But she always made excuses about being busy with work, and never helped me once. Instead, she subtly hinted at me to dress more beautifully. Once, she even secretly locked me and her father in a room overnight. No matter how much I knocked on the door, she wouldn't open it. The next day when I asked her why, she just casually said that she had fallen asleep. At that time, I really thought it was just an accident. A year later, Yang Lin died of organ failure due to the sequelae of the car accident. I thought I was finally free, but Lu Ruyan called the police. Only then did I realize that the two of them had never divorced. Lu Ruyan sued me in court, insisting that I had killed her husband. Although it was later proven that I was innocent, since the person had died in my home after all, I was held jointly liable. In the end, I could only sell my only house to pay the compensation. The only remaining inheritance of Yang Lin was a dilapidated and worthless small house. When my daughter got the news, she was dumbfounded. She was so eager to reconcile me with Yang Lin because she thought that although Yang Lin seemed down and out on the surface, a lean camel was still bigger than a horse, and he must have still had a lot of savings. As a result, her father was exactly as he seemed. She was so angry that she vented her anger on me. "You clearly knew he was a scoundrel, yet you still brought him home to take care of him. Why are you so cheap? Have you never seen a man before?" Before I even had time to feel wronged, she packed her things and moved into a small apartment without looking back. She didn't even give me a key. She didn't even ask where I would live after selling the house. Later, during a routine physical examination, I was diagnosed with cancer. There was a surgical procedure abroad that had a 70% cure rate for this disease, but the surgical fee was 300,000 yuan. Coincidentally, at that time, the dilapidated small house that my daughter had inherited was going to be demolished, and the demolition compensation was a whopping 15 million yuan. My heart leaped with joy, thinking that I was saved. I tried every means to find my daughter's new residence. The entrance of the community was magnificent, as gorgeous as a palace. Standing in front of the shiny security door, I pressed the doorbell. The door didn't open, but my daughter's voice came from the intercom. "What are you here for?" "Xin, Mom came to see you. I have something to talk to you about." Her voice became impatient. "Just say it directly. I'm too busy to entertain you." I looked around and, after thinking for a while, gritted my teeth and said, "I'm sick. I need." But the sound of the intercom being turned off made me freeze. No matter how much I pressed the doorbell, not a single sound came from inside. My heart sank like a stone into an ice-cold cellar. Until I closed my eyes, my daughter never came to see me once. Perhaps it was God's mercy on me that I was given another chance to be reborn. The three of us, after a gap of 20 years, gathered together again in a rather strange way. Of course, before officially taking over my ex-husband, I had to confirm one thing. Brother Yang, are you divorced? Yang clearly didn't expect me to ask this question. He hesitated for a moment, and gave an ambiguous answer. Lu Rian has run away. Why are you still asking this? His tightly clenched hands on the wheelchair betrayed his unease. Brother Yang, I would be overjoyed if you could come back to us mother and daughter. But, I pretended to wipe my tears and said sadly, if you're not divorced yet, I would be the mistress in other people's mouths. I don't want to be the third party who destroys someone else's family. As I spoke, I pushed Yang Lin's wheelchair towards the door. Yang Lin grew anxious. Lu Rian ran away after my car accident. I simply can't find her. My daughter also joined in, trying to stop me. Mom, it's so pitiful for Dad to live in a nursing home all alone. I didn't halt my steps towards the outside. Instead, as I walked, I earnestly said to Yang Lin, Brother Yang, to avoid giving others room to talk, I can only send you to a nursing home first. Don't worry. I'll look for Lu Rian. As soon as you two get divorced, I'll bring you back. Yang Lin's complexion wasn't very good, but for this entirely reasonable request, he really had no room to refute. Thus, he could only let me send him to the nursing home. In the previous life, it was only when Yang Lin died that I learned the two of them had never divorced. Lu Rian was just afraid of taking care of Yang Lin, and had secretly gone into hiding. Yang Lin's son was still in high school and simply couldn't take care of him. He had also considered living in a nursing home, but was afraid of being bullied by the nurses since he was alone. So for some unfathomable reason, his devious mind turned to me. Indeed, men only think of their former wives when they're down and out. Since I hold the script, I must make good use of it. I need to hurry up and find Lu Rian. During the few days Yang Lin lived in the nursing home, I hired a private detective and got news about Lu Rian. After learning that Yang Lin had latched onto me, she swaggered back home. Interestingly, Yang Lin's precious son didn't reveal any news to his father at all, and firmly claimed not to have seen her. Mom, it's said that after Yang Lin moved out, a man often came and went. Presumably, that's Lu Rian's lover. Lu Rian's plan was to wait for Yang Lin to die and make the property she embezzled legitimate. And in the previous life, because of my appearance, she even extorted a house from me and got an unexpected windfall. She had money, a lover, and a dead husband. She got all the good things. These days, I didn't leave Yang Lin alone in the nursing home. From time to time, I would go to see him with fruits, peel him an apple or a pear, making him think that I was still the ex-wife who could be pushed around by him. So on one hand he reminisced about the past with me, expressing deep regret, and on the other hand he played the victim, hoping that I could bring him home as soon as possible and let the family happiness heal him. I wore a kind smile. He was the most crucial link in my rebirth plan. I not only wanted to bring him back to my home, but also take him to his original home. What was that saying? One should always remember to go home often. After I thoroughly figured out Lu Rian's whereabouts, I decided to bring Yang Lin home. However, before going to the nursing home, I first went to the labor market. Before entering the gate, I heard a scolding voice. Lao Lu, what can I say about you? Tell me, how many times have you been complained about? Before, you were complained about for beating a vegetative patient. It took me a great deal of effort to bail you out. This time, you actually dared to attack a conscious old person. And you even knew to give sleeping pills before hitting. Don't you know that every household has surveillance cameras nowadays? I peeked through the crack of the door, and took a look at the elderly woman called Lao Lu. She looked around over 50 years old, with a burly and robust figure. Her arms were as thick as my calves. You still want to work to pay off your son's mortgage? Stop daydreaming. You've been blacklisted in the entire industry. After being scolded, Lao Lu came out dejectedly. I quickly stepped forward with a warm smile. Sister, do you want to be a nanny in my house? There are no surveillance cameras in my house. Mom, how could you be so stupid? I looked at my daughter in confusion. Just think, Dad was so rich when he was young. He's such a smart person. How could he let a woman embezzle all his money? He must be testing us. Testing what? Testing whether we're worthy of inheriting his property. That's how it's shown in TV dramas. Good people will be rewarded. My daughter spoke with great enthusiasm. We need to bring Dad home and take good care of him before that brat does. Only then can we get more property and live a good life. Is that what you think? Of course. My daughter gave me a sidelong glance. You haven't read as many books as I have. Just listen to me. I was just worrying about not having a reason to bring Yang Lin back. Unexpectedly, she helped me solve a problem. I pretended to be hesitant. 2 minutes later, I nodded. My daughter was so excited that she danced with joy, as if she could already see the wonderful life in the future. Looking at her elated appearance, my heart was filled with mixed feelings. What kind of sin had I committed to give birth to such a person? Xin, Yang Lin hasn't cared about you for all these years. Don't you hate him? My daughter urged me to go out while answering. Men, they all make mistakes. His coming back proves that he still has us in his heart. This is our good fortune. Mom, I know you're still angry, but Then she lowered her voice and said, "He must still have a lot of private money. He's just playing the victim to test us. If it weren't for me being his biological daughter, how could it be your turn to take care of him? While he's still giving us this testing opportunity, you have to seize it." After saying that, she looked me up and down and gave me an ambiguous look. I was speechless and really wanted to slap her, but it wasn't the right time yet. I didn't comment and deliberately changed the topic in an awkward way. I took the car keys and went out with my daughter. When we arrived at the nursing home, as soon as my daughter saw Young Lin, she happily ran over. She hugged Young Lin's arm and affectionately called him Dad, and carefully asked about Young Lin's physical condition. "Dad, I really had a hard time persuading Mom to bring you home. You have to reward me well." My daughter nestled in Young Lin's arms and hinted. She almost blurted out asking him to give her all his assets. "Good daughter." Young Lin stroked her head and casually said a few words of praise. Well, what a loving father-daughter scene. The scene was exactly the same as in the previous life. My daughter was never stingy with her words towards her father. She said whatever was nice and always kept Young Lin happy. But when it came to taking care of Young Lin, she didn't do a single thing. Young Lin's legs were disabled, and he couldn't take care of his own toileting. Naturally, I was the one doing all the dirty work like carrying the chamber pot. Young Lin required me to wash his clothes by hand, saying he was worried about the bacteria in the washing machine. His diet preference was for heavy flavored food, while Young Lin could only eat light food. So for every meal he made me cook 2 separate meals, one specifically for Young Lin. At that time, I was blinded by the mother-daughter affection, and once thought she was a caring and warm-hearted child. So, I didn't want the grudges of our previous generation to affect her filial piety. It was only after I got cancer that I realized everything she did was for personal gain. She was inherently a cold-hearted person. I adjusted my emotions a bit, and pulled myself back from the memories of the previous life. I interrupted the tender moment between the father and daughter. "Okay, Xin, stop acting coquettish. Let's quickly pack up and take your dad home." I turned back and said to her, "Oh, by the way, you go empty the urinal first, then wash it and put it away." When my daughter heard my instructions, she immediately widened her eyes. But she didn't want to show her reluctance in front of her father. So she quietly whispered in my ear, "Mom, I don't know how to do this. You go." I deliberately said loudly, Xin, it's not that I don't want to go. Your dad is still a married man after all. It's not appropriate for me to do these things. But you're different. You're Brother Yang's biological daughter. It's only natural for a daughter to take care of her father." After saying that, I looked at Young Lin shyly. Young Lin immediately chimed in, "Xin, Dad knows you're filial. It's hard on you." Different from the down and out look when we met last time. Today I was deliberately dressed up. I wore a traditional Chinese cheongsam that I often wore when Young Lin and I were in love. Although the color of the dress had changed from light pink to indigo, my still slender figure still held the charm of the cheongsam, and the charm only increased. Young Lin's eyes lit up, and his attitude became obviously more eager. Even if a man is paralyzed from the waist down, it doesn't stop him from having an affair. The saying, "A man is only honest when he's 6 feet under," is really true. I turned back and mouthed the word testing to my daughter. Since she said it herself, she had to carry it out even if she was crying. So, with a look of disgust, she picked up the urinal and resignedly walked towards the bathroom. During this time, when she noticed Young Lin looking at her, she immediately put on a cute face. I secretly laughed in my heart. "My dear daughter, this is just the beginning. Let's see how long you can pretend to be filial." After washing the urinal, I directed my daughter to pack Young Lin's things. She was so busy that she was sweating profusely, while Young Lin and I were laughing and playing with short videos. After returning home, the allocation of rooms became a problem. Now there were only 2 rooms in this house. In the previous life, after Young Lin came home, we vacated 1 room for him, and my daughter and I squeezed into 1 room. I often did housework until midnight, and had to get up early in the morning to make breakfast for the whole family. Inevitably, there would be some noise. My daughter complained several times, both directly and indirectly, saying that I woke her up. Considering that my daughter was tired from work, and also for the convenience of taking care of Young Lin, I volunteered to sleep on the sofa in the living room. The sofa was narrow and hard. I couldn't even stretch my legs when lying on it. Every time I woke up, my back and waist ached. I slept in such a place for a whole year. Only on the night when I was locked in Young Lin's room by my daughter did I sleep fully, clothed on the floor. Having been stupid once, I learned my lesson. I used the same trick again. On the pretext that Young Lin wasn't divorced, I proposed to live in a separate room. My daughter naturally thought she would live with me. But of course, I wouldn't let her have her way. "Xin, your dad has limited mobility and needs someone to take care of him. You sleep on the sofa." She pointed at herself, looking reluctant. But she murmured. She thought there was a turning point, and her expression immediately relaxed. "But don't sleep too soundly, lest you don't hear him when he calls you." She was stunned. She turned to look at the sofa, then at me, with eyes full of disbelief. She stammered, "Mom, I have to go to work during the day, and at night, I deliberately ignored her hidden meaning and bent down to talk to Young Lin. "Brother Yang, look how sensible our daughter is. She goes to work during the day and still takes care of you tirelessly at night." Young Lin nodded with satisfaction, and quietly held my hand that was resting on the wheelchair. "Xiaoqing, you've had a tough time these years." I pretended to be shy and gently struggled a few times, then let him hold my hand. Just as my daughter had just accepted the fact of sleeping on the sofa, a bigger test came. Her dad had soiled himself. Young Lin was paralyzed from the waist down, so of course he couldn't take care of his toileting and wore diapers all day, along with a stinking smell. A look of shame immediately appeared on Young Lin's face. He uncomfortably rolled his eyes, and his gaze landed on his daughter. Now that he had other thoughts about me, his natural male ego naturally wouldn't let me handle this matter, so he could only turn to his daughter for help. I don't know how the father-daughter duo finally dealt with it. I only know that my pampered daughter vomited for half the night after coming out of her father's room. Aunt Lu came to work as scheduled. Having just recovered from a career crisis, she naturally wouldn't cause any trouble. Young Lin was also quite satisfied with her performance. After learning that I had hired a nurse, my daughter strongly demanded that Aunt Lu live in the house to take care of her father 24 hours a day. I refused without thinking. Mom, you're so selfish. During the day, there's Aunt Lu, and at night, I take care of Dad. You don't have to do anything at all. All the dirty and tiring work is done by me. After washing the clothes by hand, and making a nutritious dinner for Young Lin, my daughter finally exploded. Glancing at Young Lin's closed door, my daughter came to argue with me indignantly. How can you say I haven't done anything? I was playing Godiju on my phone while answering casually. I play games and watch short videos with your dad, and I also push him out for a walk. I provide good emotional value. Besides, didn't you say this is your dad's test for us? Now you're putting in more effort and spending more time with him. In the future, when he thinks back, his mind will be full of you. And the inheritance. At the mention of the word inheritance, my daughter's eyes lit up, and she no longer complained about the amount of work she did. Mom, apart from the test, there's also the matter of remarriage. You have to remember that. Don't worry. I patted my chest. I can get your dad divorced within this week at most. She opened her mouth about to say something, when a shout suddenly came from Young Lin's room. I glanced over and waved at her. Go quickly. I guess your dad soiled himself again. My daughter walked towards the room with a look of resignation on her face. Looking at her heavy-footed back, I chuckled softly and continued to start a game. 5 consecutive wins, so refreshing. Every day after dinner, I would push Young Lin out for a walk, claiming it was to get some fresh air. Until one day, I pushed him to a small square where some people were dancing ballroom dances in groups. People were dancing closely, their bodies touching, and their lips were so close that it seemed they were about to kiss. It was so ambiguous that it made people blush. Look, brother Yang. When you recover, we can also learn to dance like this. Young Lin looked in the direction I pointed. His smile faded as soon as it bloomed. As the two people dancing cheek to cheek turned their heads, one of them was a face he was extremely familiar with, Lu Ruyan. She was dancing closely with a man, their bodies seemingly magnetically attracted to each other, inseparable. Not only were their bodies pressed tightly together without any gaps, but the man also frequently whispered in Lu Ruyan's ear, making her blush. The atmosphere was so heated that if a bed were brought in, it would be a rated R scene. There were cheers all around. Lu Ruyan giggled constantly. However, every time she laughed, Young Lin's face turned a shade paler. When they moved closer and Young Lin saw the man's full face clearly, he was stunned for a moment and then, like a madman, spun his wheelchair and charged forward, crashing into the two who were stuck together and making them stumble. Lu Ruyan let out an ouch, and was about to turn around and curse. But when she fixed her eyes and saw that it was Young Lin, her face immediately turned as colorful as a revolving lantern. Since the investigation, I had felt that this man looked familiar, but I couldn't remember where I had seen him. Seeing Young Lin's huge reaction, it suddenly dawned on me. This man looked exactly like Young Lin's son. We could even save the money for a paternity test. Young Lin was so angry that his veins bulged. He strained his head upwards, raised his index finger, and launched a full-scale verbal attack on the two, using all the dirty words. However, as he was sitting in a wheelchair, although his momentum was great, the scene was rather comical. I tightly clenched my fingers to stop myself from laughing out loud. Ipujin made me think of the scene when I was pregnant and caught Young Lin and Lu Ruyan fooling around at home. At that time, I was as impotently furious as Young Lin was now. And at that time, Lu Ruyan was leaning on Young Lin's arm, resting her head on his shoulder, looking at me with a smile as I went crazy with my big belly, and casually saying a non-mainstream phrase copied from the internet. In love, the one who is not loved is the third party. Young Lin gently stroked her cheek, and reached out to block in front of me to prevent me from accidentally hurting her when I went crazy. This scene shattered all my illusions about love. Looking at the overlapping scenes in front of me, Lu Ruyan, who was always eloquent, lowered her head, her face as pale as a sheet. Facing the scolding, she couldn't say a word. I thought she must not be mourning the love she had lost in silence. Young Lin kept scolding. Well, after all, the only part of his body that could move freely now was his mouth. As he scolded, he began to expose Lu Ruyan's secrets in public, saying that her breasts were augmented, she leaked urine when she coughed, she was unhygienic, and she went to the gynecology department every day. Lu Ruyan finally couldn't help but retort. How many times have you visited prostitutes? Why don't you talk about that? I've bailed you out 3 times. And you even brought back a venereal disease and infected me. Young Lin countered. You're talking nonsense. I always wore a condom. How could I get sick? It's you slut, who went around fooling around and got infected. Impossible. I don't have any disease at all. The dance partner who had been silent finally joined the argument. The people dancing around had long stopped dancing and formed a circle, intently watching the show. Some even called others to broadcast the battle situation in real time. Hearing this, everyone's expressions were extremely vivid. Their eyes swept back and forth among the three people's faces. These three middle-aged people were really like a toad riding a frog, ugly and with a wild lifestyle. I quietly backed out of the crowd and stood in the least conspicuous place, silently taking out my phone to record this wonderful moment. After the car accident, Yonglin's body was already as fragile as a duckweed in the rain, unable to withstand any wind or rain. While he was gasping for breath after scolding a long string of swear words, the man pulled Lu Ruyan and quickly disappeared into the crowd. With 2/3 of the main characters gone, the excitement died down. The people around gradually dispersed, some going home and some continuing to dance. Only Yonglin was still frozen in place, his eyes staring straight in the direction where Lu Ruyan had disappeared. I wondered if at this moment he regretted leaving me and being with Lu Ruyan, and if he regretted raising someone else's son for 20 years. It was really hard to hold back my laughter. My mouth was now harder to control than an AK-47. I stood there and took a full 10 minutes to suppress the urge to laugh before walking towards Yonglin. I gently patted his shoulder and whispered, "Brother Yang, it's time for us to go home." Yonglin seemed to wake up from a dream. He stared blankly at my face and then at my hand on his shoulder, and nodded slightly. When we got home, Yonglin locked himself in the room, neither eating nor drinking. My daughter came to ask me what was wrong. I told her the whole story. "Great!" my daughter exclaimed. I immediately covered her mouth and glanced at her father's room. After confirming that her father didn't hear, she excitedly whispered to me, "Mom, this is great. Dad's property will all be mine. I can finally get out of this shabby house." Seeing that I didn't respond, my daughter seemed to realize something. She gently took my arm and said coquettishly, "Mom, when we have money, we'll live in a big house together. I won't do anything. I'll just take you around the world to have fun." I stroked her head leaning on my shoulder, and forcibly held back the sarcasm that was about to blurt out. Let her dream this beautiful dream for a few more days. The more beautiful the dream, the harder she will fall when she wakes up. Yonglin stayed in the room for 3 full days. I was extremely anxious, so anxious that I could only eat a balanced diet to have an appetite. My daughter stopped me from going in and persuaded me. "Mom, let Dad come out when he has thought it through. It just gives me a few days off. He's not eating or drinking, so it's just right to clean up. I don't have to carry the chamber pot anymore. How nice." She really was exhausted from taking care of her father. On the 4th day, Yonglin opened the door and came out. My daughter rushed up and hugged him crying. She cried and said, "Dad, you've had a hard time these years. Don't worry. I'll always be your daughter. This will always be your home." Her performance was so touching that not only Yonglin, but even I was almost moved. If she had developed in the acting direction back then, winning an Oscar should not have been a problem. The first thing Yonglin did after coming out of the room was to sue for divorce in court. I pushed him around looking for evidence, writing materials, and doing a paternity test, busy as a bee. Sometimes, when we encountered places where the wheelchair couldn't easily enter, I would even carry him there myself. Yonglin asked me several times if I was tired. I always said no. Joking, who would be tired of serving the god of wealth? Due to sufficient evidence, Yonglin's divorce judgment came out quickly. Lu Ruyan was the at-fault party, and since the son was confirmed not to be Yonglin's biological child, the two of them left the marriage with nothing. She was also ordered to return all the embezzled property, and executed immediately. When we walked out of the court, Yonglin seemed to have aged 10 years all of a sudden. I patted his shoulder. He held my hand in return and spoke to me hoarsely. He said, "Xiaoqing, I'm sorry for you these years. I didn't expect that in the end, it's still you who's by my side." I nodded slightly and said some words of comfort, but my heart was calm and without any waves. Counting the time, it wasn't far from the day he would die, and it wasn't far from the day when I would live a life of luxury with male models around me. I had originally racked my brains to come up with several plans to get Yonglin to marry me as soon as possible. Unexpectedly, he was the one who brought it up first. Men are really ridiculous. In the previous life, I served him tirelessly, but until he died, he didn't leave me half of his inheritance. However, he still remembered to leave a dilapidated small house to my daughter. In this life, I took care of myself, and the work of taking care of him was done by my daughter and Aunt Lu. But he was eager to marry me. I guess his mentality was like that of an ancient eunuch. Even if his manhood was gone, he still wanted to marry a wife to prove his male prowess. What could I do? I could only pretend to be reserved and agree. My daughter took leave and personally sent Yonglin and me to the Civil Affairs Bureau. When we came out with the marriage certificate, a long-lost smile appeared on Yonglin's face. I was very happy because counting the time, I would soon be a widow. In this life, no matter what I did, his legal property heir could only be me. Even if we got divorced immediately, there was still the divorce cooling off period. This was the first time I sincerely thanked the birth of this policy. The sequelae of the car accident, and the running around some time ago had completely broken down his body. His gastrointestinal function was also completely gone. Now he almost had to defecate 3 times after a meal. He was either changing his diaper or on the way to change his diaper. My daughter was extremely miserable, and again proposed that Aunt Lu live in to take care of her father. Naturally, I opposed it. "Silly child, your dad's condition is probably not going to last much longer. Just endure it a little longer. Mom, I really can't take it anymore. You and him are legally married. Why don't you take care of him? I go to work during the day and come back at night to serve this old guy. Have you ever considered me? After getting the marriage certificate, my daughter's attitude seemed to have hardened. It seemed that she was certain that her father's inheritance was already in her pocket. Even her private address for her father had changed. It's not that I don't want to. It's that your dad doesn't want me to do it. What can I do? This wasn't me being coy. Young-Lin really didn't want me to do these things, saying that he was afraid of dirtying my hands. I wasn't stupid enough to believe that he really loved me. It was just the ridiculous male pride. However, I was also happy to be at ease. When your dad dies, his 6 houses will all be yours. Even if you rent them out, the monthly rent will be more than you can spend. Why go to work? Just live a life of luxury at home. For my well-intentioned suggestion, my daughter didn't agree on the spot. But looking at her expression, she was clearly tempted. For the increasingly difficult to take care of Young-Lin, Aunt Lu also gradually showed her dissatisfaction. However, she knew that if she left my house again, there really would be no place to hire her. So she never talked to me about leaving. But these dissatisfactions always needed an outlet. Several times, I found excuses to go out and was away for most of the day. When I came back, I found that Young-Lin was sleeping. After waking up, he would complain to me about where his body hurt, and tell me that he wanted to change a nurse. The pain should be a sequela of your paralysis. Aunt Lu is such an honest person. How could she bully you? Don't think too much. I pushed Young-Lin in front of Aunt Lu and said in front of her, Aunt Lu, Brother Yang said that you bullied him behind his back and wants to replace you. You tell me yourself, is there such a thing? Aunt Lu was in a hurry and kept shaking her head. I wouldn't dare. How could I do such a thing? Brother Yang, you can't wrong me like this. You need to be washed several times a day. No one else would be willing to take on this job except me. Think it through. Young-Lin looked at me and then at her, swallowing his anger. Seeing this, Aunt Lu became even bolder. One day, I returned home early and discovered that she was slapping Young-Lin. As she slapped, she cursed. You old scoundrel. You just ate, and then you soiled yourself again. Why don't you just eat shit? And you even tattled. If you go and tell again, I'll shove you into the toilet. I quietly closed the door, leaving space for her to carry on, for I was afraid that if she saw me coming back, she would stop, and that would be a pity. During the day, I often found excuses to go out. However, every evening, I still had to push Young-Lin out for a stroll, mainly to let him see my new hobby. I had also fallen in love with ballroom dancing. With my pension, I bought one new dress after another, wearing a different one each day. I would choose a handsome old man and dance for about an hour. And Young-Lin was arranged by me in the VIP position with the best view. His hands were gradually losing strength, and his speech was becoming slurred. Not to mention coming over in his wheelchair to bump into me. Young-Lin made inarticulate protests, and I wasn't so autocratic. I directly agreed and said that I wouldn't take him out next time, letting him stay at home every day. He seemed to be stunned, perhaps thinking that if he stayed at home, he would have to be with Aunt Lu every day. At the thought of this, he compromised. I wonder how he felt, sitting in a wheelchair with paralyzed legs, watching his wife dancing closely with other old men. Anyway, I felt extremely pleased. One day, when I was on the phone with an old man, I accidentally pressed the speakerphone, and Young-Lin heard it. He used all his strength to wheel his wheelchair in front of me and, with red-eyed, questioned me. Xiaoqing, I'm not dead yet. How could you hook up with someone else so soon? I didn't feel the slightest bit of embarrassment at being eavesdropped on. Instead, looking into his eyes, I answered frankly, yes. Back then, when I was pregnant, it didn't stop you from cheating. Now that you're about to die, I'm just looking for someone in advance. What's the problem? Young-Lin was so angry that he couldn't speak, and his eyes seemed to be on fire. Now in my eyes, his way surely was less than that of a kitten. I want to divorce you. Young-Lin finally shouted hoarsely after a long while. Sure, go ahead. I shrugged indifferently and made a gesture of invitation. Just moving those 2 or 3 meters had already exhausted all his strength. Now without someone to push him, he couldn't even get out of the door, let alone file for divorce unilaterally. I'm going to call Xin and ask her to take me, he said. Fine, call her, I said, looking at Young-Lin with amusement as he searched for his phone. I had hidden the phone long ago, since I made the suggestion for my daughter to quit her job last time. She seemed to have opened a new world. Before Young-Lin even died, she had secretly gone abroad to play on her credit card and stopped going to work, just waiting to come back to inherit a large fortune. When Young-Lin couldn't find his phone, he panicked completely and started to rage impotently. However, the most strength he could muster now was to overturn a chair, and then collapse in his wheelchair, completely spent. It made me laugh. I ignored him and continued to chat on the phone with the old man in front of him, making an appointment to dance. Then I went back to my room, changed into a form-fitting and elegant cheongsam, and swayed out of the door without looking back. Under my daily mental torture and Aunt Lu's physical abuse, Young-Lin finally couldn't hold on any longer. On his deathbed, he had a sudden resurgence of energy, and pulled me to talk about the scene when we first met more than 20 years ago. At that time, you had a ponytail and were wearing a light, pink cheongsam. You were so beautiful, he said. I snorted coldly and pushed his hand away, saying sarcastically, that was the most regretful day of my life. If I hadn't met you, I should have had a much better life. Do you know that? Every day I've spent with you since you came back, I felt extremely disgusted. Young Lin stared at me intently, his face becoming paler and paler. His throat seemed to be choked by phlegm, and he couldn't say a single word. His breathing gradually became rapid, and after his chest heaved violently, it suddenly stopped. He stared with wide eyes and didn't move anymore. I reached out to feel his breath, and there was none. He was dead. This man who had entangled with me for decades was dead. I placed my hand over his face and closed his eyes. After Young Lin died, I gave Aunt Lu a generous red envelope and introduced a new job to her to express my gratitude for her care of Young Lin. During this time, my daughter didn't call back once. It was not until the third day after Young Lin died that she returned in a hurry. I was tidying up the room, preparing to vacate this house for rent. As soon as she entered the house, she asked, "Where's Dad?" I pointed to a small box on the ground and told her, "Your dad is there." I could tell that she was trying her best to control her emotions, but the upward curving corner of her mouth still betrayed her. Dad is dead. Dead and cremated to ashes. Then what about Dad's property? Is it all ours now? My daughter didn't even look at the small box properly, and started to eagerly ask about her father's inheritance. "What do you mean ours?" I glanced at her. "It's all mine. What does it have to do with you?" I replied while continuing to pack my luggage. At first, my daughter thought I was joking and chatted with me playfully for a few words. When she found that I had no intention of relenting, she panicked. "Mom, what on earth do you mean? I'm Dad's biological daughter. How could I not have a share of the inheritance? Did you ask Dad to make a will and leave everything to you? How could you be so mean?" "There's no will," I said. But upon hearing that there was no will, my daughter immediately relaxed. Before I could finish speaking, she interrupted me. "Without a will, it will be divided according to the normal process. Half for you and half for me. Don't try to play tricks, or I'll sue you in court." I looked at my daughter's arrogant face and found it very funny. I said calmly, "What evidence do you have to prove that you are Young Lin's biological daughter?" She was obviously stunned by this question. I continued composedly. "Before you were born, your dad and I were divorced. Your birth certificate only has my name. The father's column is blank. But you remarried Dad later. Young Lin is still my dad, isn't he? As his daughter, I have the right." I touched my chin. "He can only be considered your stepfather. And when we got the marriage certificate, you were already an adult. He didn't raise you, so naturally, you have no right to inherit his inheritance." I calmly explained to her. Joking, I had crammed all this legal knowledge after my rebirth and calculated precisely that all these inheritances were mine and couldn't be shared at all. My daughter obviously didn't believe what I said, but she couldn't think of a reason to refute me for the moment, and was so anxious that she was pacing around. As her eyes roamed, she saw her father on the ground, and her tone hardened again. "I can do a paternity test," she said. I chuckled. "Sure, go ahead and hold that box for the test. Anyway, he's your dad. You hold it." Before I could finish speaking, she quickly squatted down and held the ashes in her arms, as if she was afraid that I would snatch them from her. How ridiculous. Who would want to snatch that unlucky thing? "Fine, when I get the test result, I'll sue you in court for embezzling other people's property. Don't regret it then," she said and left without looking back, holding the box. I did feel a bit of regret that I didn't abort her back then, and instead raised her. Young Lin's urn being taken away actually solved a problem for me. I really didn't know where to dispose of it. Carrying an urn to do a paternity test was simply ridiculous. I could even imagine the speechless expressions of the staff. I heard that after my daughter was driven out of the identification center, she went to a lawyer for legal advice and even went to the court, threatening to sue me. While my daughter was running around, I sold the house where the three of us used to live and converted it into cash. Besides the house that would be demolished in the future and yield 15 million yuan, I sold all of Young Lin's remaining properties. Looking at the long string of zeros on the bank card, I finally couldn't help but laugh out loud. After 2 lifetimes of hard work, this was what I deserved. After finishing these matters, I went abroad without delay. One reason was to go on vacation, and the other was to have a physical examination. Fortunately, the cancer that had killed me last time was still in its initial stage. A minor surgery could cure it. The doctor said that my physical condition was good, and I had plenty of time to enjoy life. I completely relaxed and felt the beauty of life. With money, a healthy body, a dead husband, and no children to tie me down, who could be happier than me? When I was lying on the beach, wearing sunglasses and leisurely sipping red wine, a phone call came. I picked up the phone, and before I could speak, the person on the other end was in tears. "Mom, where are you? I really don't know what I did wrong. Why are you treating me like this? I don't have a job now, and I don't have a place to live. I still owe a lot of credit card debt. Please help me, okay?" The last sentence, "Please help me, okay?" reminded me of the last phone call I had with my daughter in my previous life. I had also pleaded with her like this, but the response I got was that she hung up on me mercilessly and blocked me. "No," I refused coldly. My daughter flew into a rage and shouted on the other end of the phone. "Fine, then I'll see who will bury you when you die. When you die, all this money will still be mine." I was too lazy to listen to her babbling and directly threw my phone into the sea. With money, I could be capricious. What did it matter if no one buried me? Anyway, I wasn't the one who would be scared at that time. I still had many years to live freely. It didn't matter if I suffered a bit after death. However, I forgot to tell her that I had already made a will. After I died, all my property would be donated, and she wouldn't get a single cent. Of course, that was all in the future. Let her discover this surprise slowly. I just focused on enjoying this unexpected wealth. The end.